Hey everyone! Today I'm going to teach you a melt and pour soap technique that I have never shared with anyone. This is one you are not likely to have seen somewhere else. With through my many years of making soap and watching soap before I made it, I've never seen anyone else do this. It could happen that somebody else has, but I've never seen it. So please join me for this really fun and unique way to make labradorite soaps. Labradorite, if you have never seen it, is a stunning gemstone. It is related to rainbow moonstone gemstones. Actually, I believe that rainbow moonstone is a type of labradorite, but we are not doing ones that look like rainbow moonstone today. We are looking at making the kind of the more traditional look, the ones that tend to shimmer in blues and purples. That's the first one I ever saw, and it's pretty common for labradorites to have purples and blues that are reflected. When I say shine, it's really more of a glow. It's a flash. If you've ever seen the blue flash of rainbow moonstone, that's what I'm talking about. But it isn't in a white type of background. It doesn't. It's more of a dark black to gray. There are probably some other darker colors that come into play as far as a base um, or background color of this gemstone soap. Gemstone and the gemstone soap. But we're going the traditional route, and then I am doing part of it is going to have um, some golden labradorite colors in there, which is kind of the same thing. You're going to have golden colors over a black, as you see me pouring here, a black base. And it's all going to be in one piece. If you know me, you know how much I love pouring soap out on my mat, making soap sheets. It's just fun and can create some really unique looks. This is the same, well, not what I'm doing now, poking at it, but normally I use these for my chiffon soaps as well. But I actually had done this design long before I did my chiffon soaps. So um, I was pouring my soap out for quite a while. I'm kind of just roughing up the sheet as it's drying. It's, as you see, there's kind of a skin on it, and I'm just moving it around a little to create some wrinkles and rough places because most gemstones are not perfect. And I really do like to get an organic look to my gemstones, my gemstone soaps, and I like them to be as realistic as possible. I am spraying with alcohol because that does help it to dry or set up and cool off more quickly. A word to the wise: if you are planning to make this soap, you do want to stick with dark colors for this soap that I poured out. Black is what's recommended. Um, you could use other dark colors, I imagine, but I would look up what what the gemstone looks like and get as many different looks at it as you can. Just Google it and go up on the top of the menu where it says images and click on that. Find as many labradorite images as you can and just glance through them and see there will be kind of a dark gray or black backing look to it. There's a lot of cracks to the look. And at least most of them. There might be some that are sheer perfection and have nothing, but I haven't seen those. Um, Anyway, you could, experiment with other colors. Right now, the way the light is shining in the video, it looks a little like it's reflecting some type of gold or brownish on half of that. And that is just my lighting. It is not the soap itself. It's pure black. I used activated charcoal, as I mentioned in the text up above. And I'm using, if you keep an eye on what colors I'm using. I'm using very bright, light, shiny types of micas. I highly recommend a type of micas called interference micas or shift micas. Even duochrome micas might be all right if they are soap safe. One of my favorite micas of all time is the one I'm kind of brushing through now, and it is called Blue Moon White from Mad Micas. As you should see that I will be putting these all up there in text, but I wanted to point this one out because it is the perfect example of an interference mica. It is white, but when you put it on a darker background, the light reflects another color. And so you can find those reflecting a huge variety of colors, but Blue Moon is reflecting a lovely blue. And it looks like the blue flash that you see in this type of gemstone. And I also, one of the other ones that has a little bit of flash in it, it's not an interference mica, but it is a shift mica, and that is the Nebula has a little shift of blue. It's a purple mica overall, but it has a little bit of blue. And some of these other colors have a little bit of shift to them, or a little glitter, or they're just very bright and catch the light. I particularly noticed that in King Tut, which is a gold mica. Any really brilliant gold mica will pick up well. And I did use a darker color in here. I used a few darker ones that more for blending purposes to just kind of go with other colors I had that were bright and very reflective. You'll notice in the pictures at the end kind of how the colors turn out, how they show up in this particular style of design. It's I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. It's very interesting, but what you see me doing here is setting up the whole picture for the end result. And I did it half at a time this way. Because I wanted to play with two different sets of colors. So you see that the colors on the left are more purples and blues and whites and very, very cooler shades in general. The right side, I wanted to experiment with the gold. I wanted to do a golden labradorite look, and I incorporated some bronze, the Interstellar, which is a lovely copper bronze with a bit of glitter, so it's a little extra shiny. This is similar to the technique, or at least the setup of the resin soaps I do, the raindrop soaps and the what do you call it? The crushed velvet look, or crushed velvet look soaps that are resin techniques. And the idea being similar is that you are doing bright micas over black, and it does make a difference. But it's a little less strict than that because you can use glittery type micas with this. If you do that in the other one, the black shows through too much and usually destroys the image and picture you're after. But with this type of soap, it's replicating a gemstone that the black does show through. So if you have some streaks from your paintbrush, I'm just using a dry brush here. That this was my dad's paintbrush, by the way. So little heartstrings pulling on me while I made this soap. I guess the heartstrings weren't pulling. I guess the brush was pulling on my heartstrings, something like that. But as you see here, I am now scratching off some of this mica. So if you have streaks from your brush, or if you have a color that doesn't adhere perfectly, it's probably going to be okay. I wouldn't worry as much as I do in the resin look soaps. And as far as these scratches go, you do want to be careful not to cut all the way through. If it cuts through a little bit, it's okay. You'll see what happens with mine. I cut a little further than I intended, although I don't mind it being a little bit cracked. I don't mind it even breaking in places, because it does. And I'm going to break it up anyway, so it doesn't really matter that much. but you don't want to separate it all. You don't want just a bunch of triangles and diamonds. As far as the patterning goes, I really recommend looking at labradorite soaps to get a feel for that. I do crisscross hatches and diagonal lines, but I also alter it a little bit, and you have to have lines crossing over. It doesn't look as much like labradorite if you just do a bunch of stripes. And then I come back with some kind of random lines connecting some of them, because that's the way some of the layering looks in the stone, at least many times. And that's kind of I like to go for the kind of quintessential look of the labradorite stone. See there, it ripped right there because I was cutting a little too deep. You will see in a moment I do the other side. You need to do both sides. If you don't, the world isn't going to stop turning, but you're going to have probably more black than you want in the soap. In my opinion, you should allow as much color to show as possible. And we'll get a little bit more into that when we put the soap together. But I do both sides, and that way, no matter which way it faces, you're going to at least have some color in there. You will see some black. That's on purpose. As we cut through anytime you cut through one of those, you're going to at least see the side, the stripe of black that happens when you cut through it, because it exposes the black. So, real quick here, I have to interrupt myself. I am being so stingy with my micas right now because it's very easy to see this technique and think, wow, that's a big waste of mica. But it really isn't. I'm using what kind of spilled off to the side when I brushed it. And you do want to brush off the excess. It's, again, not as imperative as some of the resin soaps, but you do want to brush off the excess for the most part, or you're going to end up clouding your soap, your final product. So I tried to scrape up as much of those micas that spilled over when I brushed them off, the loose micas, and use it on the edges. And you will see in a later soap that I do, because this video actually came out to be about at least three different videos. But in this one here, you will, or not this one, sorry, in another one, you will see me using up the rest of that mica because I don't let any of it go to waste. I get up as much as humanly possible. And all I did with the other sides, just so you know, with the colors, I didn't exactly replicate what was on the other side. I just kind of used the similar colors and went in a similar pattern. It was definitely not trying to be exact. I did use less mica on that side because I figured there was enough extra from the mat and from my brush to also to cover the black, and it did covered quite well. It's a little bit of a different look. It's a little less stripy, and I was less careful as I was dispensing the micas out there, and on the black I was less careful about making rows and stripes. I just kind of wanted to blend some together and play a little bit more with this side. I think both looks are great, and I think they both sides end up looking like labradorite. The difference with this side is the technique that you're seeing me do right now. I'm not cutting this time. I was a little nervous about cutting through both sides because it would have probably just fallen apart. So I just scratched, and I actually got a deeper look. I got more black to come off. I kind of just scratched the mica off with the very tip of my knife, but not really the very tip, the very end of it. But you see it's a flatter hold that I'm holding than when I was cutting. I'm kind of holding it flat and scratching or scraping off some of the mica. It did not interfere with the soap at all. It did not cut into the soap or create, there's my mica hands, did not create deep lines in it or deep cuts in it at all. Really no cuts. So, but it looked really cool. I thought it looked great. And yes, I incorporated both of those into the same soap, and it still looks cool. So we're getting ready to pour. As we do, I'll talk just a quick second about the Narcissist fragrance oil. I am in love with it. It seems to be one people are talking about quite a bit. Um, and there's several fragrance companies that have come out with it. It's a duplicate, and I don't even know who the duplicate is of. So I know it's called Narcissist. I don't know who makes it. I'm sorry. I know my duplicate was purchased from Wholesale Supplies Plus, but there's several brands that carry it. And I have samples of several places, and I will be using all of them because they all smell great. It's very fresh to me, very fresh and clean scent. It smells kind of like a high-end shampoo or something. I don't know. I love it. Anyway, enough of that. Um, you may or may not have noticed I did add a very tiny bit of liquid blue dye, not even a drop. It may have looked like a drop, but that was a bubble. And I just kind of let the bubble pop, tiniest amount, because I did add more fragrance oil in this vat of clear than I did in the other, and it was just a tiny bit yellow, and I didn't want that, so I added a tiny bit of blue. Depending on the fragrance oil you use, you might want to add that or not. It looks kind of weird over here that I'm adding some fragrance oil to. It's kind of a blackish clear. And all I did, I've done this since day one of creating this soap because I wanted to get, there is kind of a black, like I said, black or gray clear look to some of the labradorite soaps. And I wanted to kind of nod to that in there. So it's very little colorant. I usually use, what do you call it? Oxide, black oxide dispersed in glycerin. But this time I went ahead and used the charcoal because I had it right there in the pot, and it was just the leftovers of which was barely anything. And I added clear to that. So when I melted it, it tinted the clear a little bit black. But you see, if you look at my stirrer thingy, you can see that yellow going all the way down. So it is still clear. It's not going to really block your soap or your embeds here that we've created, which are really, really pretty. And you saw me tearing them up. Obviously, that's on purpose. So here goes the pour. The pour isn't as important as the addition of the embeds. You see, I'm spritzing with alcohol now. You will notice there are times where bubbles crop up and I don't spritz with alcohol, and that's on purpose. You don't want to spritz it with alcohol until you've covered the embeds around it with soap. So pour soap before you spritz. You don't want that mica spreading all throughout your soap or it will ruin the look of it. So I'm using the kind of more golden colors on this side, on the right side there, more of the golden and copper. And there is some blues and there's some greens and there's a little bit of purple in that side too, but it's mostly the golds and that good stuff. And then the other side I go with the blues. Now, as you're setting these in there, keep in mind that you're going to be cutting this up in a different fashion than a slab, or you could actually do it in a slab. I thought about doing that, just cutting them in slices and having it be a slab soap, like a slab crystal. But I wanted to show my crystal cuts that I usually do because it really shows off the dimension and the look of the mica that kind of glows out of it. It shows the flash to me. But I divide it in half. So as you see, I put some sheets in half. I put two so I can try to cut in between them. And then I put as many layers as I can facing out. And then the last step of that that's kind of important is to do one diagonal on each half. And I don't remember if I went both directions, but diagonal, and then keep adding. Add as many of those little things as you can. And I come back. The way I cut it is I cut the soap in half and then I cut it diagonally. And so I want it to have as many of the pieces and the embeds showing with this cut as I can. And so that's the goal. So you face them up against the outside, but not too close. I like to have a little bit of clear in between those outside embeds that are up against the walls, sort of. I don't like them flush up against the walls. I just like them as close as I can get. so that when you cut into it, you still see it. I don't finish the black. I don't pour the rest of that sheer black in there. I just do a little bit. I did add some Sparkle Me Aqua to that. Don't go overboard with it. It just needs a little bit. But it's a really nice effect to have a little of that in there. And the last thing I think I do on this is I put some on the top as well, because the top of the crystal needs some flash and sparkle too. You can kind of see down into it and see it, but I want something that shows right away when you look at it on every side. Typically with the cut like this and this soap, I get at least 2 or 3 of the sides of the crystal that look stunning, and the top stunning, and even the bottom stunning. And sometimes there's one side that's not as flashy as the others. It's still pretty. And if you're, as you're using the soap, there's so many little layers in here. That's the other reason I add a lot of layers, is there's so many layers in here that as you use it, you're still seeing some pretty stuff. That's the goal anyway. And here's one of the moments here where I'm making sure I'm covering the soap that has mica all over it, those embeds, before I spritz. And I did spritz. I don't know if I showed it, but I did. And in this cut, you will see me struggling a little bit because I couldn't wait. And it wasn't just excitement, it was timing. Again, we did a very long video, and sometimes you just have to wrap it up. And it wasn't quite done, and I didn't ruin the soap, but I recommend give it at least 3 hours to set up. Maybe longer if you can. It's not, it doesn't take, ages, but you don't have to leave it overnight, but you could. And what would it hurt? I needed to get it done because I needed to get the filming done. We have to kind of do it all in one fell swoop. It's very difficult to come back the next day and do the cut because we don't do them in the house. We do them in the workshop, and it's a whole thing. So I'm kind of trimming the top off, and those and the few pieces that I did not use will be used for sure in another soap that you will see quite soon. In fact, as we once you see me doing the cuts and you see me bringing up the close-ups, I want you to try to stay around if you can. Stick around through the whole thing, because I do have Lightbox pictures for you today. And my very last Lightbox picture in here is a spoiler. It's one of my other soaps that I did in through this video, during this video. And it's really, I think it really came out cool, and I wanted you to see it. It's part of what I'm hiding over under that box, but just a part of it because there's 3 other different soap styles there. But it's a really beautiful one, and you can see that at the very, very end. The loaf itself, I think, looked really cool. I don't know, I was in awe of it. Carefully cut if you can. Try to see and maybe cut from the side that you can see the best from, so you can see where are your embeds and where you're cutting. Yes, you can cut through the embeds, but you want to try to leave some of the mica portions alone if you can. And so I try to cut through those pieces I put in the middle so that the ends have something pretty. Tip for when you cut too early and your soap is really sticky, first of all, spritz around the knife. If it's stuck together, spritz around the knife, spritz in the cut, and then twist it off. Don't pull. If you pull off, you're more likely to ruin it, or at least make it icky. You probably wouldn't have it ruined. You just have to cut it and trim it. These, there's a little gelatinous stuff going on there, and it looks rock-like enough, in my opinion, to leave it alone. So I think I may have trimmed one off a little bit, but really mostly I left them alone because it was just a little bit bumpy but clear. It looked kind of like a gemstone to me. Anyway, so again, I try to see where the diagonal is. And when I make my cuts for my crystals, for my crystal chunk shapes, I offset that diagonal. If you see on one end, there's about 1 inch, and then there's 1 inch on the opposite side, or 1.5, whatever way you want to do it, but make them sort of equal, and that's how you can get mostly equal weighing pieces. And this one wasn't great. As you see, I kind of was off a little bit, but I was paying so close attention to where the embeds were that I wasn't watching my cut that great. So, but I try to make like the smaller ends about even. And in these, I wasn't as worried about it because I was more wanting a pretty soap rather than worrying if the soaps were even or not, because I'm probably just going to I'm not sure what I'm doing with these, but look at that. I don't know if did I show it long enough for you to even see it. Just even the first cuts. This isn't the final soap, of course, but this cut right here. Look at that. I think that's stunning. I was oohing and ahhing while I was cutting these. I was also mad at myself for cutting too soon, so I was also, berating myself a little bit. But and then you do the same thing. You cut in half ish, but at a diagonal. I just try to look. They're going to be two different shapes with each one of those triangles that you cut, and they're just slightly different. One is wider, one is kind of thicker all the way around, but they end up usually being about the same in weight, which makes it a little easier when you're selling something. So here we see I spritz at the knife and twist. And that, honestly, it doesn't even have to be a soap that isn't fully set up for it to stick to your knife like that. That's pretty common if it's humid or if it's just a stickier type of soap. But spritz it with alcohol and twist. And we're cutting here. Oh, it's not the last one, but I was so stubborn in wanting to get these done, I didn't even try to let them set up because I knew with that first cut in half that they weren't done. But they weren't squishing out, and that's the important thing, is that it's not squishing out. Like I said, this kind of soap is a little more forgiving, and if you know me, you know I like doing soaps that are very forgiving and designs that are very forgiving. That gives me a little more artistic freedom and wiggle room. As you see here, I'm starting my faceting of these. I cut them in the kind of odd little, I don't know, trapezoid-ish shapes, and then I facet off the corners. I don't do them the same way every time. I tend to be a little bit more cautious with this gemstone soap because I don't want to shear off too much of where the mica is showing up. So if I have a really pretty spot, I don't like to cut too much off of it. Normally, I cut off the corners, and I usually do a couple of them long ways, so they go all the way to the bottom. And then I usually do some that are a little shorter. I like to make them not quite as even because these are supposed to be kind of hand-hewn chunks, crystals. And, well, they are hand-hewn, but they're not crystals, they're soaps. It gives it that look of a chunky. I know there's another word for it, but anyway, it gives it that look of a crystal that is not perfectly polished, but has been given some facets. And you'll see in a moment, I do these first. I do the corners first. And I sometimes I always do the top corners and get at least a little bit off of those. And then I sometimes come in toward the inside of the soap from about the middle or wherever my top cut comes from, and I'll sometimes go inward. You might see me doing that in a couple of these where I'm cutting off the bottom corner of a couple of them. Like I wouldn't do that on all of them, but that's just me. You do whatever you want. You could make it this is very freeing to play with these kinds of soaps and experiment with the crystal look and the type of cut you want, because there's so many options with these. If you saw my previous labradorite video, I was looking for the look of a cabochon with no cuts. It's just a rounded, smooth, polished finish. And it was a little bit of a different technique. And I messed it up a little bit. And some of you get mad at me when I say I messed it up, but I did. I didn't do the technique properly. And so I got some spots and some things. They weren't totally ruined. They're still soaps. They're still pretty, but they're not ones I would want to necessarily sell someone if I were putting those up on my website if they had a spot. I think I had one that came out really, really nice. But anyway, um, you will see me remake those. And that's part of what I did in this video that I'm hiding there under the square. But I did a different kind of boo-boo. I hope you'll stick around for next time I publish one of these and see the other mistake I made. And I will say the soaps are beautiful. They came out just lovely, but they don't look like a labradorite soap because I forgot a step. But that being said, I like to experiment with a variety of crystal shapes and sizes and cuts. And this chunk kind of style is perhaps one of my favorite to do. It was the first one I ever did, and I've kind of stuck with it for many, many of them that I make. When you cut through a design, it really reveals some nice effects. And so I find that that helps show off whatever it is I'm doing in the loaf that I make into a crystal. It just it's not really like a polishing, but it just sort of reveals uh, all the intricacies of the design. And so now I've got a little bitty knife. It's like a little paring knife. I normally don't use this to do the top edges, and I just go along the very top, although there I did one down the side. Normally I go around the very top and just facet a little bit, just give it a little trim. Sort of like when you do the what do you call it? When I use like a vegetable peeler and go around the edges of my soap, of my regular like rectangle soaps. And I used to use a vegetable peeler for that too. I usually do. I have used the paring knife before, so you may have seen that. I can't remember if I've done that on film or not, but you can do either one you want, whatever you're more comfortable with. I didn't feel like getting up and trying to find my soap vegetable peeler, so I used a little paring knife. And just be careful. You see me pulling toward my thumb a little bit. It's not going to touch it. I'm real cautious with it. I know this is sped up enough to where it looks dangerous, but I'm being extremely careful, and I recommend that you do the same. And I wouldn't don't start cutting soap at you or towards you or whatever unless you've really had some experience cutting soap and doing this kind of thing. I used to carve with plastic, a type of plastic. And so I got quite used to a kind of slippery feel cutting something slippery, because soap is slippery, especially when you're cutting it. Even if it's not wet, it can get very slippery. So be careful. There's my rant on that for the day. Some of you have probably heard that a few times. So I'm just trimming these up. And as I'm trimming them, I'm reshaping a little bit. I'm looking for any place that doesn't look good to me. And so that's personal. You might not want to cut anything off. I don't know. I think the facets give it a more of a jewel look and really, really help bring home that feeling of labradorite. Most people who've seen this have reacted that it looks like labradorite. And some of them even thought that they were looking at a gemstone group or page instead of soap. So I'm fairly confident that they look like labradorite. I know they're not perfect, but I'm very pleased with them. I was really pleased with this set of them. It's the first time I've used the golden look. It's the first time I've tried the golden labradorite. So I was happy with it. I still think I like the blues better, the blues and the lavenders. And I'm bringing them as close as I can with this to keep it in focus. I didn't want to get it too big because I knew I had that little square I had to cover up. And but I'm hoping that it's catching the light enough for you to see how that mica glows and how it looks like the flash of a gemstone, like a rainbow moonstone or like a labradorite crystal or like many other soaps that have a flash to them. This one, you might notice that some of the ones with the golden mica, gold and bronze or copper looks, also have some of the blue in there, and some of them are almost half and half, which I found really cool, and it wasn't intentional. It's just however it worked out. But you can also see the layers of many of the embeds that I put in, and you see where I cut that, where I cut through the crystal. Well, not on that side, but where I cut through the crystal, you can see those black kind of wavy lines in there. And that is where, that's the side of it. That's where you get that black extra look of a like layering. And it can look like a very layered gemstone. And I was trying to replicate that. And in putting in as many little embeds as I could, I feel like I helped that look along quite a bit. You could, if you didn't paint both sides, you might end up with just a bunch of black lines, which still could look really cool. I have a couple of them where one side just, you see mostly just a few black lines, and that's most of it. But there were only a couple of those, and it was just like one side of the soap. I didn't have any of them I was disappointed in. They're just stunning. I am planning to continue with my clay soap series if you haven't seen those. And every other week, I'll be putting out a new art soap. Ooh, that one really catches that blue. I hope you can see that. Oh, my. Oh, real quick, before I get into the next few soaps I'm doing, just want to let you know I did use some of the, I think I did tell you, I did use some of the larger sparkle micas in this and even in the painted on. And you can see it pretty well in this particular soap at the top. And one of them that I wanted to highlight real quick is the Sparkle Me Red. You could also use the Sparkle Me Blue and all of the ones that Mad Micas has, or something similar. But they really added a touch of sparkle to them without being overbearing. It didn't, to me, it didn't look like, a glitter fest or anything. I was pretty I can't think of the word, cautious, I guess, because if you know me, I love glitter, and it would be very easy for me to just coat the whole darn thing in glitter. But I didn't. I was very reserved. That's the word. I was reserved with my glitter. And ooh, that one's got a gorgeous flash. That is definitely looks like the blue flash that you see, or blue and purple. That was one of my favorites. I'm okay. So back to next week. I do plan on doing a remake of the, like I said, the other soaps. Some of them I did with in this video, and I still have to go back and do another because, like I said, I messed up the cabochons. But you will find some interesting techniques used in this. And I'm not going to, I promise I won't do labradorites forever. You will see several labradorites here and there over the next month or two, but other stuff mixed in because I don't want anyone to get bored with it. And since I'm doing every other week mostly with the clay soaps, if you don't like clay soaps and you don't like labradorites, you might decide to just stop watching. And I hope you don't. But I will slip in some other things in there. I do plan on doing a Mother's Day soap, and I plan on bringing you a really interesting kind of melt and pour that most of you have probably not worked with before. In fact, the video will be my first time using it, and I'm super excited about it. And I'm not going to spoil the surprise and tell you what it is until I'm getting ready to publish it. But I promise you it's going to be very intriguing, and it is so super clear and beautiful. I can't wait to try. I hope I don't mess it up. Um, the little banner picture you have going on here, I always like to pull up my 3 favorites, and it's easier for me to kind of create a little banner look from that if I don't happen to get to doing light box pictures. because obviously that's pretty easy to line up a banner picture in. And I did get to that. I got a brand new light box, and I will probably link that in on my Amazon page. If you don't know, I have an Amazon shop where I try to link as many things that I've used from Amazon in there. I do uh, receive commission for that, but my whole goal for that isn't making money. My goal for that is to have a lot of my stuff in one place so that you can find some of the random things I've bought on Amazon, which is quite a few. It's a little bit of a disease. But you're seeing here the Lightbox pictures. I have to experiment with it a little more with the lighting. It's brand new to me. Today was the first time I used it getting these pics, and I have a bit of work to do to get it the way I want it. But it's pictures, and I think they're just a little dark is all. Oh, but that one came out nice. Well, I cannot thank you enough for giving me your time, sharing your time with me. I hope you loved this different technique. I doubt you've seen it anywhere else, but if you have, please let me know. I'd like to hear about it. And let me know if you've seen labradorite. If you haven't, look it up. I promise you will be amazed. Thank you so much. Bye.